It had been a long, grueling week for Emily. Between work, family drama, and sleepless nights, she had barely enough energy to make it through her daily routine. So, when her brother offered her his old, isolated cabin in the woods for the weekend, she jumped at the chance. A quiet retreat was exactly what she needed. The cabin was small, tucked away deep in the forest, miles from the nearest neighbor. The perfect place for solitude. The first night was peaceful. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the occasional hoot of an owl. Emily settled into the quiet rhythm of the woods, her exhaustion fading as the warmth of the fire wrapped around her. But then, around midnight, she heard it. A faint scratching sound from the walls. At first, she thought it was the house settling, or perhaps some sort of animal trying to get inside. She rolled over, trying to ignore it, but the sound grew louder. It was more deliberate now, like something was digging, scraping against the plaster. Her heart began to race. She tried to convince herself it was nothing. But the longer she listened, the more convinced she became that the noise wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from within the walls of the cabin itself. The sound continued throughout the night, growing more frantic with each passing hour. Emily sat up in bed, wide-eyed, staring at the wall nearest her. The scratches had turned into a rhythm, as though something, or someone, was trying to communicate. A low thumping followed the scratching, like a pulse. Then silence. She tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't rest. The sound started again. She threw the covers off, heart pounding, and grabbed a flashlight. The beam of light flickered as she approached the wall where the sound had been coming from. There was something strange about the wall. It was old, the wood warped and cracked from years of neglect. But now Emily could see it clearly. Small indentations in the surface, like fingers had pressed against the wood from the inside. Her breath caught in her throat. The scratching resumed, louder than before, and the thumping grew into a slow, deliberate beat. Something was alive behind the wall. She grabbed a small hammer from a toolbox in the corner and, with shaking hands, began to pry at the wood. Her mind raced. Was someone trapped in there? Or something? The wall came apart with a crack, revealing a hollow space behind it. The air that rushed out was damp and musty, thick with the scent of decay. Emily hesitated, her breath shallow, as she shone the flashlight into the dark void. At first, she saw nothing. Then the light caught something. An eye. A pale, bloodshot eye, wide and unblinking, staring back at her from the darkness. Her pulse quickened as she backed away, heart hammering in her chest. The eye blinked, then a low, raspy voice whispered from the void. "Let me out." Frozen in fear, Emily stumbled backward. The whisper came again, louder this time, almost desperate. "Let me out. Please." The walls creaked, and the air grew cold, biting at her skin. Without thinking, she turned and fled from the cabin, not stopping until she reached her car. She didn't look back. The next day, Emily returned with the police, her brother by her side. But when they opened the wall, they found nothing. Just old timber, weathered and decayed with time. There was no trace of anyone, no sign of anything out of the ordinary. But as they walked through the cabin, Emily swore she could hear it again. The soft scratching, the rhythmic thumping. It was faint, just on the edge of her hearing, like a heartbeat behind the walls. And this time, it was calling her name.